Hi, I'm Faith, and I'm losing my voice at the most inopportune time.
Hello, hello. Audio check.
Okay, I'll go ahead and go next then. Rita?
I'm here.
Jim?
Testing 1, 2.
So can't really tell if people are in the room, but we'll wait for more people to come in before we get started. All right. Well, I am getting an indication that we are good to go. So, welcome everyone. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. Today, we'll be engaging in the Engineering a Safer World panel, where we'll be discussing topics such as data privacy, protecting your information, being able to navigate through different regulations, as well as the opportunities that come with security, cybersecurity, and the technology space. I am Cassie Oguanu. I am currently a engineering, so it's like electrical and computer engineering undergrad with a minor in entrepreneurship. And I'll be one of your co-hosts tonight with my lovely co-host, Faith.
I'm Faith. I also did my undergrad at Rutgers with electrical and computer engineering, but I'm currently a grad student doing my PhD here at Rutgers.
And we are joined by three of our panelists that we'll be engaging in this conversation with. So panelists, if you could give a brief introduction to you, giving a background for our crowd, that'd be great.
Let's start with Jim.
Okay, sure. Hey, hello everyone. I'm Jim Taylor. I'm a Rutgers electrical engineering graduate from many years ago. And currently my role is the Chief Information Security Officer at Steve Madden. We're a global manufacturer and retailer of shoes, apparel, and clothing. And we are headquartered in New York City. So glad to meet everybody.
Cool. Rita?
Well, first of all, thanks for the invite. I'm really excited to be here. I'm a Rutgers graduate as well. I went to undergraduate in electric engineering. I have a master's in electric engineering from Rutgers, and as well as an MBA from Rutgers. So I'm a big fan of Rutgers and what it offers. I work for AT&T. I'm part of the Chief Security Office of AT&T. I have responsibility for network security and been with AT&T since I graduated from Rutgers. I've been there for about 20 years. So looking forward to answering any questions you have around cyber.
And Wade.
I'm Wade Trappe, Associate Dean of Academic Programs in the School of Engineering. I'm also professor in the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department and Associate Director for the Wireless Information Network Laboratory, where I lead the efforts in research for wireless security.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for being here, panelists. I just have to say, I love seeing so many ECEs on the call. Fills my heart with joy. But also, congratulations on 20 years, Rita. That is not a small feat. So congratulations. And we'll get started with the questions. So going into a conversation about data privacy and protecting information, it's important to kind of talk about your spark with technology. So what drew you to technology, specifically the security space, and what made you want to get involved with this kind of work?
And this is a question for everyone. So I guess if we can start with Wade and then kind of go around.
Okay, so, well, I'll go right at the security angle because I think I was all, I kind of came out automatically nerdy and stuff to begin with. But when I was an undergraduate, I had two, I guess, formative experiences. One, I worked my way through undergraduate at a naval research lab where I was working on sonar. And part of the problem that we did for Department of Defense was figure out how to break these things. And it was kind of fun, interesting to not just find bad guys, but pretend to be a bad guy a little bit. And then at the same time, while I was an undergrad, I ended up just randomly taking a class in the computer science department. I was not a computer science student on cryptography, and I really, really enjoyed that class. And in particular, I enjoyed the fact that it was very mathematical, and that really got me rolling with it. And then later on, when I went off to grad school, I was not planning to work in security. In fact, I started in signal processing, and I ended up on the side working and writing a book on cryptography with just another professor, not my advisor. And that was it. I mean, it just, kind of eventually became part of my thesis in a strange way.
Rita, what about you?
Interesting question. When I graduated from Rutgers, cyber was not the plan at all. I love technology, and I got involved in the mobility, and I've been supporting AT&T on various projects, including deploying our network that we have in Europe and Asia Pacific. I got involved with cyber about 5-6 years ago. I thought it was just a great step. At that point, it was a pivotal time for the industry. Everybody was starting to worry about cyber. Things were picking up in the industry around. We started to hear about breaches and concern about malware and all sort of activities in cyber. So it was just a perfect time. I was curious. I'm oh, this may be a good thing for me. And it proved to be the best thing I ever done in my career, because it's never a dull moment. Every day is a new day in cyber. The threat landscape is evolving all the time. It's about speed. It's about complexity. It's about getting ahead of the hackers and the bad guys. It's about having a strong cyber defense program. It's just about constantly pivoting and learning new skills to mitigate the risk that we have in a network. So I just love it. I think it's an exciting field for folks that are considering cyber as a career. It's the best place to be. It's a perfect storm right now. The demand is high. The investment is high in cyber. At the same time, there's not enough talent or labor in cyber. It's definitely a shortage in cyber. So it's a really good thing to consider if this is something that excites you.
Awesome. And last but not least, Jim.
Yeah, my career, once I graduated Rutgers as an engineer, my career, I had no idea I was going to be involved with cybersecurity. It kind of evolved that way. So my first 2 jobs out of college were very engineering centric. I worked on military systems with a company called Teledyne, and then I went to Honeywell Aerospace and worked on the space shuttle for about 4 years. So very, like I said, nothing to do even with computer science, just basically pure engineering jobs. And then after that, when I switched out of Honeywell, that was the job where I kind of got more involved with computer science, but really cybersecurity wasn't a big thing at all at this time. It was more if in its infancies, IT, we were connecting computers together for the first time. The internet wasn't even invented yet, if I could go back that far. And then when I did the job before, the one I have now, was also a retailer. And that's when I first got involved with cybersecurity. And it was kind of, again, not part of my role when I first started there, but it kind of evolved. They gave me, I was in charge of the PMO, or the project management office. I'm also, besides cyber, I'm a certified, PMP, project management professional. So I started there, I formed their PMO. I ran a lot of the projects. And then they had a problem with their compliance initiatives, which at the time were PCI, or payment card industry. The rules and data regulations around protecting credit card information for our customers, and Sarbanes-Oxley, which is SOX, which is really about public companies and how they, publish their numbers to Wall Street and to the general public, honesty and truth around that. So that was kind of floundering. So they gave me that on top of the PMO. And eventually I became in charge of both. It was the PMO and IT compliance. And then, as Rita mentioned, all the data breaches started happening. They were at fellow retailers, not mine, but Home Depot and Target, and they were making very big headlines. Hundreds of millions of customers were getting impacted, and all of a sudden the board of directors was very interested in cybersecurity. And at that point, I was in charge of cybersecurity. And that's how I got involved. And I've been doing cybersecurity now, about 14 years, and also compliance and data privacy. So I've been doing all 3 now for quite a long time. Yep.
Yeah, it's really It's really awesome. And it's interesting to hear how all of you kind of found your way into cybersecurity, whether it is not necessarily the initial position or kind of area of interest that you had, but all roads lead back to it, I guess. We're going to talk about the opportunities within cybersecurity and technology later within the panel because it is a very hot commodity now. So I'm definitely looking forward to exploring that.
But as our next segment, we're going to be getting more into kind of data privacy and data security. So just in case people don't know, how would you define like data privacy and data security? And what specifically is like the main thing that people should know? And I'm going to put this one to Wade.
Okay, so I'm going to give a very non-technical definition for privacy or data privacy, and that's basically the stuff you don't want other people to know about you. And I mean stuff like quotes. And I'll even go to say like data security is a little more specific because that's more about like the actual data itself. All right, that's about the bits and so on. But let me go back to privacy. All right, there are so many examples where you live your life and you don't realize that you have all this information and context and stuff associated with you. For example, all right, maybe one of us here has high cholesterol. All right, and maybe we're kind of really sensitive about that. We don't want other people to know it. Why? Well, because maybe if that got found out by, I don't know, an insurance company or something, we might be denied insurance. All right. Now, is that something that we think of like wanting to protect like a bank account? No, it's not. I mean, I think of like bank accounts and PIN codes and all that sort of stuff. That's like really getting closer to hardcore security. But for privacy, there's all this extra stuff too that goes with your who you are. It's, again, things like your context. All right. The Googles and the Apple phones and stuff, they knew where you lived before they ever asked you to put in your address. Why? Because when they were tracking your location, it always started in some place. It always went to some place. That was probably your work. All right. And then always went back to some place, your home. Context. Not that it ever asked you or anyone leaked any information that, hey, I live here. It just logic. It makes sense. You always start someplace, you always end someplace. That's probably where you live. So there's all sorts of context that we just aren't even aware that we need to protect or might want to protect. All right. And probably the most important aspect of it that we don't really realize is that we don't know what all these contexts and aspects of our lives we really want to protect until they're kind of gone already or out there in the public. So I'll kick it back to you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, way that you bring up. I feel like oftentimes users aren't aware of how information is ever flowing and accessible. And additionally to that, it's just companies don't need to steal from you. Oftentimes it's readily available, but we'll dive deeper into that. Jim and Rita, would you like to add on to that?
Cool.
I guess the only thing I will add from my end, I mean, AT&T is about connectivity, right? We're the network. We carry, big part of the internet traffic today. So for us, it's all about encryption. Encryption is a big topic, right? Making sure anything that gets transmitted on the network is encrypted to, mitigate any man-in-the-middle attack or things like that. So it is a big topic for us as well, making sure that from a connectivity perspective that the user is protected.
Yeah, great point.
So I guess with that, I want to ask a question to Jim specifically. What kind of information are companies looking to acquire from users?
Yeah. So I'm going to break it down into two types of users that we keep data on. So they're very distinct. One's our customers And that could be a customer, it's on our e-commerce, one of our e-commerce sites or in one of our stores. And then there's employee data. So employee data is a little different, if you work for Steve Madden. So on the customer side, we have PII, which is personal identifiable information. So that's gathered. So Steve Madden could market to you, email you. If you want to join like our loyalty program, there's a certain amount of information that we'd have to gather from a PII perspective. So this way, we could, have you join our loyalty program. And the other one's PCI or payment card information. Obviously, every time you shop with us, again, whether it's in the store or online, you're going to need to use a credit card. So we're very careful around, protecting PCI data. And we actually, on the PCI side, I'm the auditor, so I audit our PCI controls on an annual basis. On the employee side, it's a little different because we really don't look at credit card data. And we just still have PII because obviously you need to know a lot about your employees. So, payroll, benefits, but we also track PHI. So they all have this, right? It's PCI, PII, and PHI. They all start with P and end in I. So personal health information. So again, that goes into our benefits and health systems. And that's something that an employee would be in our employee system, but obviously we wouldn't need any type of information about PHI or personal health information on our customers. So it's very distinct buckets, and we have, lots of different controls on how to protect e-com. And at the store level, it's really what we call POS or point of sale is where they would gather some information for you from the customer. So those are the two critical systems where we need to make sure we're protecting the credit cards and the PII. Yep.
Sure. And to follow up with that, so what you said was a good amount of information that passes through company and companies alike that go through encryption levels to keep those safe, but it is a wide amount of information. So what I would pose to the panel is, how easy would you say it is to collect information from a user?
Well, from a customer, it's fairly easy. Like if they want to, shop at our store or on our website, and maybe we have a guest checkout, but if they want to join our loyalty program to get points, to get, 50% off a pair of boots for the winter, there's a certain amount of minimal information that we need to collect, like your, name, login, password, email address. And, it's pretty easy to collect the information from the customers. And I mean, they're willing participants, but there's a lot of regulations around how we handle that data. Like in the United States, we have CCPA, which is the California Consumer Privacy Act, and then soon to be the Virginia Privacy Law goes into effect next year. And for our European customers, we have GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. And they're kind of all very similar. They're all around data privacy. And there's a lot of guidelines and requirements on how we handle customer data. And you as a customer of Steve Madden can say, hey, I want to know what data Steve Madden has on me. And you fill out a DSAR. It's a data subject access request. And the DSAR basically comes to us and we have to process it within X amount of days. And basically gives us a report to the consumer on here's the data Steve Madden has on you as a consumer. And you have a request that you could delete the data. Say, all right, Steve Madden, I don't want my data on any of your systems anymore. And that would be all systems, whether it's store level or one of the 7 e-commerce sites we want. We'd have to purge all that data within, I think, 45 days. There's a lot of other like data breach notifications that are part of GDPR and CCPA, but I won't get too much into the regulations. But I'm just trying to emphasize that your data not only is it protected, but it's heavily governed also. And there's a lot of compliance requirements around the protection and the reporting of your information back to you as a customer.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd love to hear Wade's intake on this question.
Well, let's see. So I don't know nearly as much as my colleagues do in terms of, I guess, the practical side of things. But I would basically say that it's pretty easy to collect information. right? Because you often don't even know what you're doing, right? It's things like when you're online, you click on stuff, and then all of a sudden you realize, hey, it was connected, to your Gmail account because you're using Chrome, and all of a sudden you find weird emails the next day, all right? And other examples like when you use Amazon, all right? Yeah, you're shopping around, all right? And it's kind of weird. They do some things to try to market to you, all right? And so if you were buying gifts for someone who is expecting a child or something, now all of a sudden Amazon thinks you're expecting a child, and it's kind of a weird place. But the point is, it's easy to collect information. It's not always right, but from their point of view, they don't have to be right at 100%. They just have to be right enough to be able to figure out how to market. And so, again, I'm sure the answer is there's all sorts of ways information is accessible to both companies as well as to the bad guys out there, which we haven't talked about too much directly.
Yeah.
I think we've definitely all experienced the ad situation where you're like, I looked at this once, but now it's the only ad I see.
Well, sure.
On that, I'll just say,
yeah,
it's amusing. Sometimes I find out that my wife was looking at something because Facebook
gives you the ad,
which associates us, pops it up now on my screen. I'm like, I don't care about this. Oh, she did, so.
Which is so interesting because there's just so many links between different platforms that a regular user won't know of. And once they're on Amazon, they're like, oh, this isn't going to go back to like the Google Suite or anything like that, or have any ties to something I'm doing completely separate from like my Christmas shopping. But it's just weird to see how a lot of things are interconnected.
And I think it's only gotten worse since the pandemic, since we're just all on our computers a lot more. So this next question I'm going to pose to Rita. As the pandemic's forced us to be more online, how have you seen companies and even your own personal relationship with technology changing in terms of the security space?
That's a great question. So we all rely on technology more than we did in the past, right? And with COVID, I think we rely, more and more on technology. We do everything remotely. People are working from home. People are remote learning is another use case. We're shopping online more than we're going to the stores. So everything is happening remotely. And then on top of it, if you look at industry trends, IoT, Internet of Things, is a big topic in the industry. It's been out there for a few years now, where everything in the home is going to be connected, right? It's not just no longer about your mobile device, your iPad and your PC. Everything is going to be connected. You're going to have many, many devices on the home connected to the internet. So what does that mean to a company like AT&T? It means that we are there to support our customers. It means that we're going to have a lot more traffic on our network than we used to historically. I can tell you over the last year and a half or 2 years since COVID got started, the amount of traffic that we carry on the network have increased significantly. Just to give you an idea, I think mobility traffic only went up by like 40% due to COVID. So we have to adapt, right? We have to make sure that we support the customer. We support that increased volume of traffic on our network. I think on an average day, we carry about 400 petabytes of data. So huge amount of traffic as a result of COVID and as a result of technology that we have to support. I'm going to go back to cyber. It also meant a lot of things because of COVID. The cyber landscape did change as well. For example, we're seeing a lot of phishing attacks related to cyber, right? Social engineering that is more focused on cyber, tricking you around around COVID topics. To do social engineering in that space and install malware on devices. We're seeing even domain names that are attacks on domain names that are COVID related. So even in the cyber space, we're seeing COVID to have an impact on how things are happening. So, one, we have a lot more traffic because everything is happening remotely at this point. And two, even the cyber landscape has changed as a result of COVID. We're seeing COVID related kind of attacks that we had to respond to.
So I guess really related to that, the next step that we want to know is what kind of protections are in place to either protect either personal data or like these domain names that you were talking about. And this question is fielded at Jim, but I think also Rita, I'd like to hear your response to that as well.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so I'll just pick up where Rita left off, I think. So when we went remote for the employees, it was kind of a big deal because we didn't have the full, capability for every employee in the company work remote. So we had about a month and a half push to get everyone equipped. If you had a desktop, we got your laptop. We had to get, security stack on every computer. We had, boost our VPN capacity. There was a lot. It was pretty crazy for about, I would say, 2 months till we get everyone, remote because the offices did close. And on that point, all of our store network shut down. So we operate about 250 stores. And when the pandemic first hit in March of 2020, we basically went down to 0 stores. So every store in the network shut down. So obviously the increase of traffic on our e-commerce sites exploded. So that was really the focus of my security efforts last year, was to really put some extra layers of security on our e-commerce sites, which we operate, Dolce Vita, Superga, Betsy Johnson. There's a whole bunch of different brands that we run, but we had to put protection on everything because really all the revenue of the company was through e-commerce for quite a bit of 2020. So the protections I put on were things around cookie management, script management on the website itself. Some of the attack vectors we were seeing are called form jacking or MageCart, where MageCart's a gang that basically attacks the front ends of websites and tries to scrape, mostly credit card or consumer information. So we put some protection around that to protect the consumer data, which does mostly it's JavaScript management on the front end. And the second one is a lot of fraudulent websites popped up, pretending to be like one of our sites. And so I had to put another tool in there, it was really brand protection. So Superga.com is ours, but maybe they spelled Superga with 2 G's or something. And they were trying to, the motivation for the bad guys is to, steal traffic from our real site, either to deploy malware to your computer, steal your credit card information, things that maybe put a fake sale in, they'll sell you a counterfeit product, all the above. So we did a lot of work on that, where we have the capability now to take these sites down very, very rapidly in an automated fashion. So.
Cool.
Yeah, and that's really interesting to hear. And it goes back to our previous topic of data privacy. That's paramount now, especially within the last 2 years where everyone has been online in droves and online traffic is definitely surged. So it does leave users vulnerable to these type of attacks. So being able to put those restrictions and those protections in place really help protect them during those vulnerable times, since they're not necessarily expecting that, which is definitely great. And I wanted to pose the question to Wade, how do you feel as though, are there any similar changes in the academic space in response to COVID, comparable to industry, and kind of the changes with increased working from home?
So I think things are actually a little different in the academic world. We don't have the same interaction with customers that, everyone else on this call does. But we have students, and students are themselves kind of our challenge. I mean, we have to protect their information, right? And we have the same type of issues like private student information to protect. All right. But we also have issues like the tests and the exams and things like that we have to administer. And protecting the sanctity of those also means that we have to deal with things like, all right, how do we give online exams? All right. And that's been really hard. So it's similar in some ways, but it's also different. I mean, we weren't facing the, constant types of attacks that other people were, businesses were, but we certainly have our own internal issues about how do we keep on providing education, all right, in a way that's safe and secure.
Yeah, and piggybacking off of that, do you feel as though these changes from us experiencing the last 2 years are kind of heading towards being permanent or are temporary for the moment?
So who do you want to answer that one?
Going back to you, Wade, but anyone after that can definitely chime in.
I think the world has evolved quite a lot. I mean, and in security, the world has always been evolving. The threat landscape changes very frequently. And so in some sense, it's a little bit, yes, it's new, but things would have been new anyway in a year. Right. And then things will be new in another year. However, what has definitely changed is the way we live life now, how we work, right? We're all doing this call right now over Zoom as opposed to being in person, all right? So there's a lot more virtual interaction, all right? We also have heard in the news, like, there's people aren't going to go back to work as much as they're going to start factoring in more remote employment. Maybe it will end up being every Friday, people work from home or something like that. But the point about that is it changes then things like what Rita experiences, which is increased network traffic compared to 2 years ago. All right. And that means, the more data that goes over their network, the more that she has to protect. All right. The more bits that go across it, the more chances and opportunities that there are for information leakage. So ultimately, what's going to happen is the threat landscape is just going to keep on expanding. And the good news is that, also technology and companies like AT&T and others, they're also evolving too.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I want to comment on that because I don't think we're going back. I think the things have evolved and the remote, working from home will continue to be a trend for some time. Maybe we're not going back 5 days a week to the office, but maybe we're going back 2 days a week versus 5, right? So I do think this will continue. I think the demand in terms of traffic will continue to go up, but I do want to comment on the last thing that Wade said about the network and the technology is evolving too. So keep that in mind. I know the threats are evolving, but the network and technology is evolving as well. Like today, we rely a lot on SDN or software-defined network as a technology. And that gives you the ability to expand your resources. Think of it, the network is a lot more elastic than it used to be in the past. So when we need to increase the traffic, we could do it in a matter of seconds versus before it was relying on a hardware and equipment to be deployed. So the technology helps us handle the demand, but it also helps us from a security perspective, because we can now deploy a firewall, for example, on demand, real time, block traffic when we need to. So just, I know we talk about security and threats evolving, but technology is evolving and giving us tools to help us stay ahead of the game as well.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you.
Hard to hear.
Yes, for sure. And thank you, Wade and Rita, for those insights. I know personally, I've definitely benefited being able to work from home, doing school as well as co-ops and internships. And it's really garnered a more flexible environment due to having to work through Zoom, Teams, kind of working with managers and professors to work out a schedule that works for everyone involved. So I feel like it definitely yields its own benefits, and there are certain drawbacks, but it's just dependent on the situation that you're in. But before
we're talking about evolving, let's move on into our next topic, which is more about Rutgers and I guess how the students can prepare themselves for a career in cybersecurity. So this one is for both Jim and Rita. How do you guys think that Rutgers prepared you to be a technologist in your field? Let's start with Jim.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, so engineering school, I think, prepares you from a mindset perspective. The way you tackle the courses, it's very methodical, analytical. I think a lot of those types of attributes, problem solving, are very helpful when your role is being in charge of cybersecurity for a large corporation. Because basically any given, the job, Rita, I know in your intro, like the job varies from day to day. So like you just don't know what you're going to walk into. Like this week we had an Apache vulnerability, a very severe Apache vulnerability came out. And so I'm like scouring our environments this week. I have like our external auditors calling me, are we vulnerable? So that was this week, but next week could be totally something else. But again, problem solving, being methodical, looking for root cause analysis. A lot of the things that engineering classes teach you, I think are very handy, for the cybersecurity professional. When I went to school, there was no curriculum in cybersecurity, but I know things have evolved, and I'm sure, obviously there's certification programs. If you want, after you graduate or get your master's, if you want to get certified, like CISSP is very popular and things of that nature. If you want to really take it to the next level.
Rita, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, sure. So what attracted me to Rutgers, I would probably list 3 reasons. One is just excellent faculty and staff at Rutgers, very supportive, very approachable. I can recall many times where I reached out to them for help. I remember at that point when I was in undergraduate, that I walked to Dr. David Daw. He was the chair of the electric engineering department, and I was just, I didn't even know him much, and I told him about the job that I just lined up, and I wasn't happy about it. He's like, just come back and do your master's here at Rutgers, and you can work for me next year. And he just opened the door for me to stay at Rutgers and continue on and get a graduate degree in electric engineering. The second thing, which Wade would probably relate to, is just excellent research facility. Like Wynn Labs is like world-class, facility. It opened the door for me to get a job at AT&T and get involved with mobility and technology. So really just acknowledge that was the reason I was able to get a summer intern and eventually land at AT&T. And then finally, the last reason, which maybe to me is also interesting, is that, when you go to Rutgers, it's a big environment, right? That really helps you survive in a big company. When I went to AT&T, I just knew how to navigate in a big environment. So these to me were kind of the top reasons why, look back at my experience at Rutgers, and I think it was just great.
Thank you for your insights, Jim and Rita. We were just talking about, before we hopped on to the stream, that once you get into Rutgers, you're hooked. So it's definitely nice to hear your insights about your time at Rutgers for sure. And Wade, from having the pleasure of teaching here and being a part of the Rutgers community, what do you feel is unique about Rutgers within the security space?
Okay, so I think our research program is certainly very strong, right? And that was hinted at by Rita a few seconds ago. We have a pretty good program when you look at the research being done in the electrical engineering department, in that other department known as computer science and so on, where we're actually really contributing to advancing the state of the art in things like better cryptography, better network security protocols, better ways of monitoring the environment to see where communications are coming from and so on. So there's all sorts of neat things going on here. All right. But I don't necessarily think that that's what really makes us unique. All right. It is certainly one of our strengths. What I think is unique is that, Rutgers spends some time looking at itself and trying to say, how can we be better? All right. We do that quite a lot here. All right. And, it's a bit of a challenge because, we're in a very populated state that's very dense and so on. And you got North Jersey quite different from South Jersey. So we kind of represent, we have pretty much like a whole University of the United States just here in New Jersey. All right. And in the process of looking at ourselves, we in the School of Engineering say, well, what do our students need? All right. And one of the things that's definitely come up, all right, is that we recognize this gap between what I'll call the research world and then the real world. Right? And often that's not really addressed in universities. And so we have actually been strategizing here in the School of Engineering about how we can address that because, let's just be blunt, most of our students don't want to go out and become, PhDs in cybersecurity, right? They want to go get jobs and they want to contribute and they want to have, meaningful impact that they can see and experience pretty directly. To do that though, all right, we don't need to turn them into PhDs and so on. What we need to do is give them some skills that will directly help them. And so when you look at programs that are not all research oriented, so for example, some of our master's programs, all right, we are introducing master's and certification programs across this university in things like information security or cybersecurity. We have machine learning programs, which that also is a very powerful tool for addressing a lot of cybersecurity threats. But more than that, one of the things that's definitely come to the forefront is our need to give our students some of the practical certifications that both Jim and Rita mentioned, like CISSP, CompTIA. Right? You don't find universities offering that, but right now we don't offer it, but we are trying to figure out a way to make that available to our students, much like the civil engineers and the others go and get, professional engineering certifications. Well, we want to be able to offer that to our students. And so we're working on trying to figure out how to do that in the next year or two. And I believe that will be a very powerful tool for us to help people like, Jim and Rita out. All right, but also give our students something much more tangible and marketable so that they can go and say, we're ready to contribute now.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you bring up, Wade, in the fact that you want students to be as marketable as possible for any opportunity that they choose, whether it be within industry or moving towards more levels of academia. So I think that's really valuable so that people can really decide what path they can go on to and having all of the resources and opportunities available in front of them. So now I wanted to do a quick segue into some audience questions that have been posed. One being, with so many students, how are you able to protect so much information? I think this is posed to you, Wade.
Well, sadly, I don't actually have any role in protecting your information here at the university. I do know I'm not supposed to put a list of grades and social security numbers on my door, so I can do that. So I'm protecting your.
That's very helpful.
But no one's done that in like 30 years, by the way. Just like when I was in school. Here's what Rutgers says. All right, they say like work-related emails, all right, that involve, student identifying information. All right, so you were talking about all the EHIs and all those. Well, we have student identifying information. All right, all sorts of other acronyms here. We require that certain data cannot be accessed from certain types of computers. All right. And so there are, within the university, all right, there are systems that are dedicated and devoted just to dealing with certain more sensitive student information. On the other hand, the probably the bigger problem is just stuff like, student IDs, Rutgers IDs, and so on, and making certain that we don't release those to other students. And so there are a lot of training that that we take, like once a year. We take a cybersecurity privacy type training where you're kind of told, don't leak your student information. All right. And that's very similar to what happens in industry. All right. Lots of certifications have been, I wouldn't call them certifications, lots of employee trainings have been added on since we started this job. All right. And I'm sure it's that way in other companies, where, okay, every year you got to go through some type of webinar to remind you, don't do this, be careful with this, and so on.
I am very thankful we are in a time where SSMs aren't publicly shared. Very grateful, but yes, definitely glad that those efforts are even made and on the academic level, and students are protected in that way. And another question that I have is kind of a two-parter, open up to Jim and Rita. While a company is protecting a consumer's information, how can customers personally act to make sure their data isn't breached? And in the case where security is breached, what measures are taken to solve this?
Do you want to go first, Rita, or would you like me to?
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So, so if you're a customer of ours in Europe or parts of America, like I mentioned, there's very strict guidelines about data breach requirements and how we notify customers. And what we're seeing is states are going to start adopting what California put forth. Where some already have adopted the California Consumer Privacy Act, but other states are doing their own thing, like Virginia, I mentioned, is going to go online, I think the middle of next year. So there's very strict guidelines as far as how, if there was a breach of one of our websites or at a store level, how we would communicate to the customer. What was the second part of your question?
And how can customers personally act to make sure their data isn't breached?
Yeah, well, the reporting, if you're not notified by us, you're not breached. You can, like I said, because there's very strict guidelines now. They weren't there like 3 years ago, these guidelines. They all happened, I would say, within the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. I think GDPR went live the end of middle of 2019, and CCPA was maybe a year later. But I also mentioned earlier the DSAR. So if you're a shopper on SteveMadden.com, you could fill out a DSAR, data subject access request, and we have to basically give you all the data that we have on you. And after you review that report, it's up to you as the consumer whether you want to keep shopping with us, or you could put in a purge request, and we have to basically wipe you from our systems. So if you are nervous about maybe a particular place you shop isn't doing the right thing and they're not security minded, you can have your information removed from those systems. Another thing I'm going to talk about, there are rating agencies for companies out there. It's kind of like a credit card score. So every company has a number score, where 800's exceptional, 700's very good, 600 maybe you're not doing such a great job. So you can look at those scores. There's multiple firms doing that. One of the more popular ones called BitSight, and BitSight will give your organization, like Steve Madden, a rating, a number rating, and they'll say, here's your number, and here's where you're doing well, and here's where you're not doing so good. So I have to use that a lot at work, because not only do I monitor Steve Madden's and make sure our number and the way we look, from an external cybersecurity analysis is strong, because the hackers tend to go after the low-hanging fruit. So they have anything I see in BitSight, the bad guys are seeing too. So are they going to attack a company that's a 780 or one that's a 590, right? They're going to go after the the one that left the front door open, not the one that's got 3 deadbolts on the front door. But I also have to use it like all the companies we do business with. That's what we call third-party vendor management. Like we're onboarding a new vendor, we're sharing Steve Madden or customer data with them. Say it's in the customer case, which you guys are probably more concerned about. Let's say we hire a company to help out our marketing department. They're going to send out some targeted emails to our customers. So now we're going to share our customers' email accounts with this company. I have to make sure that company, I'll go on BitSide and make sure that they're a solid company. And I will reject companies. I won't do business with them if they're not having good, sound cybersecurity practices.
Cool. So our next audience question is also kind of a two-parter. It's, are your specific companies coming to Rutgers and offering internships and co-ops? And if they are, what are some top skills that you guys are looking for in students that you want to recruit? And I guess I'll start this one off with Rita.
We actually have a summer intern program that around cyber. Actually, it's one of our flagship programs, and it happened that my team actually runs that program. So anybody interested, you can find me on LinkedIn. But yeah, we bring talent to cyber every year as part of our summer program, and also we have an entry level program that some of you might be interested in, where we bring talent for 2 years and we rotate them. So they get a feel for cyber as a whole, not just, as a analyst or doing security architecture or solutioning or encryption. It's the whole package, even security productization, right? So we rotate them. I think every 6 months they have a new assignment, and after the 2 years are over, they get a job full-time with AT&T in one of the teams that they have rotated to over the 2 years. So we do bring a lot of talent to AT&T through either the internship program, and a lot of our summer interns, we turn around and give them offers pretty much when they graduate. And I know Rutgers is one of the key places that we actually hire from every year. I don't know the percentage of folks that we bring in from Rutgers, but I think it's significant how many people we bring in from Rutgers every year into our cyber program. And like I said, we also have the rotational program. I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
The second part was, what skills are you looking for in your new hires?
That's a very good question, and I get that question all the time. Like, people want to know, like, what do I need to do to get into cyber? And I give them the same answer. There is not a specific formula, or I can tell you most of our recent interns or hires are either computer science, computer engineering, electric engineering fields. Some come in with cybersecurity degrees, and some, just embedded in the curriculum, whether they're computer science or electric engineering. I've been very successful because cyber, it's zero unemployment, right? We have more jobs than people. I think there's a gap of like 3.5 million across the globe. So there's plenty of jobs out there in cyber. So a lot of time I can't find folks that have the cyber expertise that we can hire. So we pivot people from all sort of fields. I can tell you we've been very successful bringing people even from math and accounting background into cyber, because they're very good with numbers. They see anomalies. They can spot problem areas right away. So, definitely if you have an opportunity to take to be part of a formal degree in cyber, that's awesome. Our certification program, it's great, but it's not required. I just want people to know that there's many ways to get into cyber.
That sounds amazing.
For sure, yeah. The opportunities are endless, it sounds like. And on the topic of finding ways for people to get involved in technology and in cybersecurity, do you feel as though there are barriers to entry with tech? And if so, how do you feel people can start themselves out to make a transition in order to position themselves better? So I'll pose this for all of the panelists.
I don't feel there are barriers. I mean, if that's what your passion is, and and you take that as your undergrad, I don't really feel there's barriers, because to Rita's point, we have a real shortage of talent. I think I mentioned this when I talked to you guys last week. I went to a Gartner conference down in Washington, D.C., and they said like the job unemployment rate for cyber professionals was 0.02% was what they presented. They said jobs in the United Kingdom and in Europe were going unfilled for 9 to 12 months. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an exciting field. So, and there's definitely a need for more talent in this field. But I don't think there's a lot of, the barrier is you. You know, if you want, if you want to do cybersecurity and go get an undergrad, and maybe if you want to follow it up with some certifications, that's great. That's a great way to get started. I'm sure there's master's programs now for cyber. But yeah, it's got to come from you. You got to be passionate about it. And if you do, there's plenty of opportunity. You'll probably have a job for life. So.
Thank you for that. Definitely comes with the resources you have access to. So with working in technology, it just comes with a set of skill set. And without those resources, it can be difficult in order to get your footing. But thank you for that insight. Definitely important to have that access, have those networks to reach out to people. And we are rounding up on our hour here. So I think the last question I'll pose is, looking into the future, what changes would you expect to see within the next 10 to 15 years in network technology and data breaches? Anyone may answer.
Yeah, real quick. I think the cyber horizon's like 2 years. Things are changing so rapidly. Machine learning's huge. UBA is huge, which is like user-based analytics. So, like, what does the typical worker in my company do? And then all of a sudden, 3 months later, they do something out of the ordinary. Hey, they logged in at midnight on a Sunday. That's not normal. So I think that's very important. So machine learning, UBA, zero trust. You've probably heard that buzzword floating around, but zero trust architecture, huge right now, where we have pieces of it already installed. But if you want to get involved with anything with zero trust, I think that's also something that will be much, it's big now, but it'll be much, much bigger.
Great. Rita and Wade? Rita, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I muted it. Sorry. The only thing I'll add is I feel like the future ahead of us is super exciting. Between cyber, between data science, like Jim said, and between Internet of Things and the fact that everything is going to be connected. I mean, we are at the intersection of those three technologies right now, and I don't think it's going to slow down anytime soon. I think we're just going to see a rapid increase in investment in cyber and data science as we go forward.
And Wade?
So I like to think of like what other things can go wrong. That's half the fun is breaking stuff. And I think one of the real problems I see on the horizon is that as we increase things like machine learning and a lot of these other synthetic technologies, well, yes, it's going to lead to more data breaching and so on. But at the same time, it's going to do something else. And that is it's going to lead to this sort of ambiguity about what is real and what is not real data that's out there. All right. Leaking non-real credit card numbers is not a big deal. All right. Because they're not real. On the other hand, leaking fake videos, fake information, and so on. We've already heard about that. But imagine that as these algorithms and bots and things get more and more clever, they're really going to be able to imitate things that look quite realistic, all right, and create basically, almost fully functional, accurate, data. And what will that mean? All right, and I believe things like data authentication or attestation and other data governance problems will become as important as privacy type problems.
All right. Well, we're coming up on the end of our hour, so I'd just like to thank all of our panelists for being here with us today. And then very quickly, if anyone watching wanted to get in touch with you, what would be the best ways to do that?
LinkedIn, I'm happy to share my email, whatever whatever you think is best.
Awesome.
Yeah. Same here. LinkedIn is fine. If you want to just look for my name, it's Jim Taylor. Or my email is jimtaylor@stevemadden.com. So if you do want to email me, have a question, or you're interested in a career in cybersecurity, I had someone stop me in the hall Tuesday this week that was interested in cybersecurity, so I gave him a whole speech. So I have it well tuned.
And Wade.
Come to my class or my office or the dean's building and just say hello, and I'll be more than happy to talk.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. Thank you to the panelists for giving your time and your expertise to this topic, data privacy, data security, being able to talk about technology opportunities and the different areas of technology is very important. Cybersecurity is a growing interest within our culture, so it's really important to educate masses on that and provide any opportunities that are available. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you to people behind the screen pulling the strings, Kendra, Mira, and everyone else helping in order to get this set up.
And everyone who attended.
Yes, and everyone who